Hello. Welcome, everybody, to our Millionaire Mastermind Roundtable Conference call that we do every single Monday night at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. I'm very excited to connect with many of you and around the globe. And, you know, this is why we do what we do. We're having some fun. So I'm actually going to get everything squared away before we begin. And so we can rock and roll. So let's go ahead and have some fun. So if you're joining us for the very first time, please go ahead and grab a notepad so you can take some exceptional notes. But at the same time, if you're returning and you're a veteran,
welcome everybody to our Millionaire Mastermind Roundtable Conference call that we do every single Monday night at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. I'm very excited to connect with many of you and around the globe. And, you know, this is why we do what we do. We're having some fun.
Hey,
so I'm
there's one minor technical difficulty.
Get everything squared away before we begin, and so we can rock and roll. So let's go ahead and have some fun. So if you're joining us for the very first time, please go ahead and grab a notepad so you can take some exceptional notes. But at the same time, if you're returning, welcome everybody.
All right. Okay, a little speed bump. So, all right. So let's go ahead and rock and roll, guys. I know we're got the call definitely underway. So if you're just joining us for the first time, my name is Randy Gonzales Jr. I want to welcome you to tonight's Millionaire Mastermind Roundtable Conference call that we do every single Monday night at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time. And yes, we had a minor speed bump, but the show must go on. So the purpose of the call is to find out why you do what you do, what empowers you, what actually cripples you, and how to develop the correct mindset to move forward in all aspects of life, including your personal and professional life. So there's three main things that I want you to focus on tonight's call like we do every Monday night. Number one is, what is tonight's MMR call all about? Okay, so if you're taking notes, go ahead and write what tonight's conference call is about. Number two is, how will this information serve me? So number two is, how will this information serve me? And then number three is, what must I do next for optimum results? Okay, so what must I do next for optimum results? So let's go ahead and begin tonight's call. So for those of you that were actually tuned in and are watching this live, I definitely have an exciting call lined up for each and every one of you. If you're watching the replay, it's going to be just as exciting as the live one. So tonight's topic for tonight's MMR call is finding your purpose with ease. So go ahead and write the title down if you don't already have. So finding your purpose with ease. So, you know, I looked up the definition of what actually ease is. So ease is the absence of difficulty or effort. So if you subtract the difficulty, if you subtract the effort, that means it's easy. What starts to happen when you start to have the easy quality of life, that means things just start to sink. It's like when you learn how to walk for the first time. It wasn't easy at first, but it's probably easy now. Or when you learned how to talk, or maybe a new language or a new skill set, something has to happen, an evolution, so to speak, to allow you to go from where you start to where you do it subconsciously without any effort, and it's effortless. As a matter of fact, what it is, it's a series of solving problems. So when you're solving problems, you got to find out what is the best way to actually do this for myself so I can have fun. And what we're talking about is finding your purpose. You see, a lot of times people struggle in life there when they're wondering on what actually does it take for somebody to achieve high levels of success, high levels of peace, high levels of consciousness, to allow them to see whatever dream that they want to fruition. So there was something one of my mentors taught me many years ago, and he said, you want to become an easyologist, somebody who studies ease. Well, that ease ends with actually a process. And there's a difference between an easyologist and a struggleaholic. So a lot of times you got to figure out, you can just look at people. There's been many times in my life where I was an easyologist, but when I let my head go to work in the non-constructive way, it started to become a struggleaholic. So what is it for you to find that passion, to find that purpose, to find that joy that you're looking for in your life? Are you allowing it to come through ease? The purpose of this segment right now is I'm going to give you some simple steps that, you know, I've discovered throughout the years, and I'm still practicing many of those things today to get to a new level. So it doesn't matter where you're at, or if you're just starting personal development, self-help, transformation, ideas, and strategies, you can always do better. So here's the thing. Now think about this. Somebody took an idea many years ago, and they said, how can I make this easier for the masses? Every time we light one of these candles and we put it on a Christmas tree, it's a bad sign, right? So what if we could have light condensed inside of a bulb that can burn continuously. Now, I know many of you right now probably don't even think of what the power that goes behind it. Yes, it's been here for many years, but many of you guys know if you turn the light switch on, light should come on, and if you turn it off, light switch comes off. If the bulb blows up, poof, what do? You replace it with a new bulb. Not much thinking, but think about it right now, okay? With all the knowledge and the many years that we've already had light, okay? Because many of you guys are not in the dark right now. I don't even know where to begin with the materials that we have now, how to put a light together with these old two hands, right? I know all we got to do, if I wanted to put light together, what, easyologist? Let me go to the store, let me get a light bulb, let me put that bad boy in, screw it in, turn the light switch on, okay? So there was a process that Thomas Edison actually came up with the light bulb. And let's look at the automobile. See, back in the day, they was said that the human body could never go faster than, for instance, a horse. So that's why they started to use horse and buggies. But over the course of time, when you start to even look at birds, that was one of the things that was really unimaginable till the Wright brothers came together. And what they decided to do was, let's go ahead and put together this flying machine. Now, today, if you look at today's machinery, and if you've ever flown, because we've been blessed by our heritage, you actually have the ability to fly further, faster, and farther than any bird that's ever flown the face of Earth, including the space shuttle. So there's some things that are really amazing, but it started with an evolution. Some people put together their ideas and their passion. It started with one of these and one of these, and they started to write down, they started to express their mind on the paper, and they started to figure out, how can we? So if you're looking to find your purpose with ease, we're going to identify how to really locate what your purpose is within you. Another thing we're going to talk about is, I gave a couple examples. A cell phone, for instance, right? Remember back in the day when, maybe you guys are not as old as I am, but I remember at my parents' house and my grandparents' house where they used to have this little circular device on their telephone where you would have to stick your finger in and you would have to wind it around, and all of a sudden it'll wind back, and that'll be, for instance, like the 9. And then you have to wind it again and it'll come back and it'll be the 1. And before you know it, you wind it all the numbers, then you waited for the phone call. Until later on, they started to come up with this thing. Somebody said, I'm going to take this mold and make it just a little bit better for myself, and I'm going to spend my time, my energy. So their purpose was to invent the push-button telephone. Wow, what an amazing concept. And then all of a sudden, imagine this, okay, why don't we have a way to, when I want to get a hold of you and I can't call you right now, what if I could put this little thing that vibrates through a signal? Bzzz. Many of you guys remember the pagers, right? And like, oh no, I got to find a what? Payphone. So all of a sudden, the evolution started to happen to where somebody's purpose is, there's got to be a better way. So what they did was they started to invent these things called the cell phone, right? Now, cell phones back in the day were about this big, and they were the size of a miniature war weapon that you would keep in a tank, right? I know this because my father actually had brought one home one day, and it was crazy. I'm like, what the heck is that? He's, oh, it's a cell phone. I'm like, okay, whatever. And so now if we know today, many of you guys are probably watching this on a, your cell phone device or something else right now. So times have changed. Somebody's purpose, and this particular invention was by a gentleman by the name of Steve Jobs. You see, people find their purpose when they're passionate about something. And when you're passionate about something, it'll leave you with the aspect of sometimes not sleeping at night. As a matter of fact, last night, I was up for a while just passionate about, my thoughts on what I want to accomplish this year and how I'm going to do it and what lives am I going to impact. And before I knew it, I was just watching a couple of things on YouTube and some other stuff, all personal development stuff. I realized it was already 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, I've got to sleep because my body, I don't care what time I go to sleep, will naturally get up at about 6:30, 6:45. So I was up and running. But at the same time, last thing I want to talk about as far as easyologists, imagine when people had barter or trade, right? We're going to exchange these eggs if you can come and fix my teeth, right? Or we're going to exchange these strawberries if you can come and help me clean up or whatever. So, and then all of a sudden it started into a checking system. In the checking system, we have now currency. Now, even it evolved to what? Somebody says, what if we could get paid faster on time with a thing called direct deposit? Now, I know there's many of you get direct deposit, and you still complain about, man, we were supposed to get paid at 1 o'clock. It's 1:10. Where is the direct deposit, right? So everything has an evolution. Everything has a developmental stage that it has to go through, including walking, talking, reading, riding a bicycle, driving a car, talking, on a telephone, figuring it out, getting on your computer, connecting with people around the world through Skype or Google Hangout like we are today. So the part of the evolution that you guys want to focus on when you're finding your purpose with ease is knowing what's important and what's going to drive you without anybody telling you what you have to do. You see, when people say, I have to do this, it shows resistance. I remember growing up and my parents used to say, hey, before you go out with me and my brother, before you guys go out, you have to clean your room. And was it fun? No, but we knew the reason why we wanted to clean our room, because we wanted to go hang out with our friends. So when the why is big enough, the how doesn't matter, because you have a purpose driven behind it. So one of my mentors, actually Jim Rohn, great individual. If you've never heard from him, look him up on Google, YouTube. He's got great material. Get some of his audiobooks and his CD programs. Phenomenal gentleman. And Jim Rohn, I remember he told this story many years ago. And he said, I was at a seminar where Neil Armstrong was talking about going to the moon. And people were asking, what was the process of going to the moon? And Neil Armstrong said one of the most phenomenal things, going to the moon is simpler than most of you think. He said going to the moon is a matter of solving a couple of problems. Again, a purpose, a higher purpose. Problem number one is, how do we get there? Pretty reasonable problem. Problem number two that they had to solve is, how do you get back? And his suggestion that he gave to his colleagues that were putting it together is, I suggest you don't try going there until you've solved both problems, as you can see. So along the way, sometimes you don't got to get it right. You just got to get it going. So a little bit about my story, even as a child, I'll never forget, I was very young. I don't even remember exactly how old I was. I have pictures when I'm even at 3 years old, loving the drum set. And I remember, this is weird, but I remember this. I would take my mother's cooking utensils. She would have a wooden spoon that she would stir food with, and she would have a metal one. And I realized when I tapped two different ones, a wooden one and a metal one, I got different sounds for the percussion. And then I realized, now I know this drove my mother nuts, and if my mother ever watches this, she'll end up cracking up laughing. But I would test it on different parts of the house, okay, inside and outside. I would test the wooden and the metal spoon on the sofa couches because it gave a different bass drum beat. And then I would test it on the wall and the couch. Drove my sister nuts. And then I would test it on the refrigerator, and I would test it on the floor. And then I would test it. We would have these little cans of food wherever, like green beans or whatever was in cans, and I would lay 3 or 4 of them out, and I would start to make beats with that. And I would groove to it, and I would say, this is kind of cool. And I started to develop this love, this passion for putting sounds together in a nice melody. To me, it sounded wonderful. I'm sure I drove everybody in the house nuts. But what I realized was that it was something that I personally enjoyed because I was passionate about it. I was passionate so much that my parents were driving themselves so nuts that they said, why don't we see if we can get them a drum set, and maybe somebody can teach them a thing or two from our local church on how to play. And that's what we did. As a matter of fact, my drum teacher's name, if you ever watch this, his name is Randy, that I got so good by the time I was 9 years old. I was actually 7 years old. I was already playing in the church, but he may not admit this. He would say, hey, look at what he actually did with me. Is I would play some drums. He would tell me to play a couple of beats, and he would always have a couple of females there. And maybe he impressed them. Maybe he didn't. I know I did. So anyways, no. But what I did was I saw joy, not only from what I was doing, but I can take a minute because I did it on autopilot. I was passionate about what I was playing and the sounds that they were making, that I saw joy come out of other people. So in this process, I learned how to get passion from something that I enjoyed and I liked to do. Another thing, when I was 9 years old, actually 11 years old, was the year after I qualified as an expert in shooting rifle and long range. I liked the competitiveness of it. It was fun. It was saying, okay, if this person's going to try to compete against me, let me be the best that I can be during this time frame. So me and my father, we would always go out to gun ranges, and I would go in the backyard and shoot my rifles as many times. I would put little obstacles up, time myself, and put it together. So when it was time for competition so I could win, I was always prepared, and I had real fun in the little competitiveness, and I don't know where it came from, but it just came to me that I was competitive. Sometimes me and my sister would play the game Monopoly, and sometimes we would play Battleship. And, I always had a competitiveness in those games, which made life a lot of fun. But the third thing that I really started to realize for myself and my purpose in finding it was communication. Now, communication was huge because I always loved connecting with people and finding out what they do and why they do it and what drives them. And I did this even as a young child all the way through middle school and high school. There was a life-changing moment that happened for me. I'll never forget it. I was 9 years old, and my parents had decided to get a divorce. And it was a life-changing moment because at the same time, everything was going perfect in my life. And I was mixed with all these emotions of chaos, with fear, with anger, with resentment. Why me? What's happening? All of a sudden now I got to go out of a school that all I know for the past 4 years or so were friends, and now I got to go into this new environment where I don't know anybody. Fear. I built walls up, and I said, what's the deal? And I remember this time we were doing very, very, very bad, and my dad did the best he could, and he had to go for his own reasons, and I totally respect him for that. But at the same time, I'll never forget a lesson that I actually achieved. And this lesson came to me probably at the right time. You see, life will open up the doors right when you need it. And there was this beautiful angel, I would say, who lived across the street. Her name was Miss McCracken. Miss McCracken was awesome. But when I first met Miss McCracken, it was probably the scariest communication I ever had, because I would get up every morning before I go to school, and Miss McCracken would be outside feeding these little cats. And it seemed like when she came out, cats came out from everywhere. I don't know if you ever seen this movie before, Pet Sematary. At that time, I don't even think it existed, but that's what I was thinking. Like, why do all these cats just go over there? And sometimes she would go like this, and as a kid, you would meet up with your friends at the corner. I'd be like, I don't know if she's waving at me. So I didn't talk to her because, number one, I was fearful. I was fearful of the unknown. I was fearful of what the possibility of a relationship could be with somebody with the awesome soul that I didn't know. So one day, I'll never forget, I came home. It was a Friday. I'll never forget. My mother picked up the phone as it was ringing, and she said, yes, okay, I'll send them right over. So my mom goes to me, and mijo means my son in Spanish. She goes, mijo, go across the street to Miss McCracken's house. She's going to give us something. I'm like, the cat lady? And she said, yes. I'm like, oh, I'm not going over there. Why? I had fear. I had fear of a couple of reasons. One, I was afraid as a kid. What if, I don't know what I was thinking. But number two, what if anybody saw me, right? So at the same time, I was thinking, okay, I got to do this. So I'll never forget the moment that I went over to Miss McCracken's house. And I went in there, and actually I remember I knocked on her little screen door. And this was the first time I ever heard Miss McCracken's voice. And she had this little kind of Irish Southern accent. I can't even try to duplicate her voice. And she was probably in her late 70s. And she said, Randy, is that you? And I'm like, yes. She goes, okay, hang on. And I'll never forget, I can look through the little mesh screen door as I was looking at Miss McCracken start to stand up. She got her little cane, and she got up, and she opened the door. And like this peace had came over me that I've never felt in such a long time. She said, Randy, I got a bag of groceries for you, your mama, and your baby sister. And it was hard for me to carry it over. I'll never forget that moment. Miss McCracken did more for me than a lot of people could ever imagine. She taught me how to have heart. She taught me how to have passion. She taught me how to forgive. And she taught me not to prejudge people even if you don't know them. So Miss McCracken's no longer with us. God bless her soul. But she taught me one other thing, that not only did I get great pleasure of performing and having fun, but she taught me one of the most exciting things of my life, and one of my life lessons was how to serve and how to serve others. So if you don't have a purpose, you're going to end up spending the rest of your life serving somebody else's purpose. Most people say, well, that's not a bad thing. I have a purpose for doing a lot of things, but really deep down inside of you, there's three things that I want you to focus on when your purpose. And I do apologize, it's a true story, okay? True story. So number one, here's what I want you to focus on when you find your purpose. See, my purpose was not only to create and bring pleasure and happiness to myself and others, but it was in the form of serving. This is why I liked having a coaching business. This is why I like doing personal development talks from businesses, colleges, high schools, and anywhere that I can possibly go, from TV to radio to these Google Hangouts and anywhere, because I'm passionate about it. If I can get one person that says thank you, it means I touch somebody in a positive way that they can possibly do what Miss McCracken did with me. So here's the three things that I want you guys to focus on when you're finding your purpose with these. Number one is, what do you want? What do you want? Not what you don't want, because that's a good starting point, but there has to be another level. Just like cars, imagine if we stopped with the first Model T from the cars, and they're not evolved to the way they are today. So there has to be another level. Yes, identify what you don't want, but secondly, and most importantly, we're still on number one, is what do you want? So write this question down. What do you want? Okay? Number two is, why do you want it? Remember, when the why is big enough, the how doesn't matter. Why do you want what you want? Is it going to bring you joy? Is it going to bring you happiness? Is it going to bring you fulfillment? Is it going to bring you laughter? What are those things that you're seeking in your lifetime? What are they? And the last thing is, how can I have fun achieving it? So let me repeat these. Number one, what do you want? Number two, why do you want it? And how can I have fun achieving it? So when you start to think about, okay, can I make this process fun? Because life is just a bit of a journey. They always say a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. What's that first step? Is first identifying what is it you want. The second step is identifying why do you want it. And the third step, which is just a repeat of the first step, because walking is a forward motion, is how can I have fun achieving it? So let's talk about the first thing. What do you want? Here's a little funny quote that I used to say all the time, and I'm going to say it now for you guys. For what do you want? You see, you'll never have a dream without the potential to achieve it. What is your dream? Don't dream too small. The problem with most people is that if they dream too small, it doesn't excite them enough. You got to be a little almost afraid, because when you do achieve it, life will give you the creativity inside your mind to go from point A to point B, from point P to point C, and beyond to fruition. So what is it that you want? We're in 2015. What is it that you want today that's going to make you excited about the process? That's going to bring joy to your life and possibly the joy to other people. Maybe you're going to be an exceptional parent, or maybe you already are. Maybe you're a grandparent. Maybe you already are. Maybe you're an entrepreneur, and maybe you're deciding to be an entrepreneur. Whatever it is that you choose, number one, there's another level. Number two is, why do you want these things? So here's one other thing that I want to talk about. Life has a new meaning when you have a purpose. Did you get that? Life has a new meaning when you have a purpose. So I hope you can find out these ideas, then take them to heart and sit with yourself 5 minutes, 1 minute. Do it in the restroom, do it in the shower, and when you get that idea, I don't care, keep a notepad next to you and write it down. Even if that idea sparks at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're already asleep, write it down, because that's your creativity that's going to work, okay? So now, as many of you can understand by my stories, that I was passionate about, creating happiness with myself and others and being able to serve. Last thing, as we start to bring this call to a close on finding your purpose with ease, is we were in Dallas, Texas, and we did a big event, and we had many people there. Many personal development speakers were there. Myself was there. Mark Victor Hansen, who I co-authored a book with as well with. Jim Rohn, who I co-authored a book with as well. He had a table next over to ours. And it was just an exciting event of energy. And we started to make these connections with the audience as they came. And they purchased books and CDs and audio programs and coaching. It was fun. And I'll never forget this young lady. She was probably in her, I say, late 50s. So yeah, young lady. And she came over to my table. And it was kind of funny because I knew why she was at the table, but I didn't know how I can get her to just speak up. So I went over to her and I said, "How's it going?" She says, "Great." And she looked at one of my books and she saw The Unbreakable Human Spirit, and she's all, "I want to get this book." I'm like, "Awesome, we're at the seminar, right? Okay, sure. Here you go." She goes, "But I spent every dime that I had to travel from my city to Dallas, Texas, not only the fare to get here, but the hotel and the food, and I don't have a penny left, okay? And I don't get paid for a couple of weeks, and I am tapped out." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, you know what? Since you're in a room of creative thinkers and you're talking with me, let's be creative together." And I'll never forget, my daughter was right behind me watching me do this, and it was a 3-day event, and this was day one. And she said, "Okay, how am I going to come up with the finances and everything to do this?" I said, "You're in a room full of people. Let's get creative." And I said, "Better yet," I said, "Come back tomorrow and let's see what you do. Ask some people. Maybe you can come creative and say, 'Hey, I know you don't know me, but can I borrow $1 for 2 weeks and I'll pay you back as long as I have your card?' And who knows, maybe somebody will purchase it for you." Well, nothing happened day one. Day two comes, the same lady. After people came and bought some books and whatnot and coaching, she came back and says, "You know what? Gosh, I've been thinking all night that I've got to get that book. I've got to get it." And I said, "Well, get it." And she's, "Oh, how?" I said, "There's people around you. You see, it's not your resources that makes you successful. It's your resourcefulness." And she found some people around her. And I said, "Okay, let's do this together." I said, "Here." I gave her a copy of the book. I said, "Just hold on to it, okay? And let's talk to a couple people." So we explained what she was trying to do to a couple people. And believe it or not, a couple people gave her a couple of bucks here and there. I said, "Now go and find your 20 and then come back." And the reason why I did this, no, I'm not rude or a jerk and say, "No, if you don't have the 20. I was trying to get her to have a breakthrough in life because I knew she was at the event for a reason, to have a breakthrough. And part of my purpose in life was to serve. So day 3 comes, okay? Early in the morning, I'm like, "Okay, where's she at?" She was nowhere to be found. Oh, that's awesome. She got away with a free book and a couple bucks, right? But it was around lunchtime. And out of nowhere, the whole auditorium had left for the lunch break. And here she comes walking in, and I'll never forget this moment. She came in, and I can tell she dressed her best, and she was so proud. And she actually came to my table, and she said, "Hey, listen." She goes, "I knew I can do it." And she goes, "I got your $20. Here's your $20 for your book." She goes, "No, I want you to sign it." And I told her, I said, "You know what? I saw what you did. And it reminded me of somebody very special and near dear to me, Miss McCracken, who gave of herself unselfishly so she can do something good without anything in return. And all this lady did was want a copy of the book." I said, "Yes, what I'm going to do what you asked. You asked me to sign it, I'll sign it. But more importantly, I'm going to give you this book, but I'm going to let you keep the money." You see, life will reward you when you go that extra mile. It'll open up a purpose. And I cried, she cried. It was awesome. And I get emotional because I love it when people finally break through and do something that they thought they never can do. So for you, if you're finding your purpose, I'm here for you. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to come up with my own creativities and ways and stories and life experiences as I go on this journey called life. And I hope to live past 107, but at the same time, I'm here connecting with you. I'm here having a heart-to-heart. We're kindred spirits. We're together on this place called Earth for a reason. So what I want you guys to all to do is I want you to do a real quick recap. Number 1, is you guys all know what the call is about. Number 2, how will this information serve you? It'll serve you once you understand what you want, why you want it, how you can have fun doing it, but allow yourself to enjoy the process because you never know whose life you're going to change. Ladies and gentlemen, time is up. I had a blast connecting with each and every one of you that were on live tonight, or if you're watching the replay. And stay tuned for next week's MMR call. So with that in mind, I want you all to live with fulfillment, serve with passion, so in this lifetime, you can leave this earth with no regrets. So until next time, God bless you and your family, and I'll see you guys at a higher level. Take care.